Hey everybody, it's Doug here, Douglas the Guy, Board Game Geek, bringing you my top 20, 50 top of my top 50 games that are solo and not just solo, but cooperative solo and accessible and all the good stuff. We've been over the rules. I'm not going to go over the rules. I did have some dialogue over the last episode, some emails and some things on the forums, etc. So I wanted to talk about that, and I think the biggest one that came in question was Shadows over Camelot, because Shadows over Camelot definitely has a trader mechanic in it, but much like some other games, it could be optional, and if it's optional, it's something you can take out of the game, or it doesn't always pop into the game. I did kind of include it, especially if it's a really good game. And actually, I think Shadows over Camelot is a really good game. It's accessible. It's got really cool art and mechanics and everything. So that was the one that came up the most. I think it's a worthy addition to my top 50. It definitely belongs in there. Even though I did realize I'm missing some, and it's kind of frustrating me because I don't know where they'd fall anymore. I'm going to stick to my guns though and talk, because if they didn't come up in my head for my list of 100 or more that I had on the list, I guess they weren't meant to be on the list. So you guys are probably going to get to the end and go, what about this one? What about that one? That's cool. We'll talk about that. That'll be fun. So anyway, we're going to dive right in. And I'm going to start talking about my top 20. Now, at the 20 slot, I told you I cheated a little bit. It's actually top 22 because I had a couple ties. And I tied them because they kind of they fill a different niche for me in the space. And they have, while they have a feel, a completely different feel to the game, they both are in about the same ranking for me. And I'll go over them. So number 20A and 20B, let's do that. And they were at the 20 slot. It wasn't that I just didn't feel good about making it one of them 21 because they're slightly better than the 21 slot that I had, at least for me. So the first one I'll talk about is one of the hardest cooperative games I think I own. I rarely, when I play it with people, or myself, whatever, we rarely win it. Even though an app was developed for it that helped me get better, way better at the game, it's just so hard to win. And I said this in an earlier episode, the sign of a really good cooperative game, and a game that you lose all the time, is that you want to keep playing it, even though you keep losing it. And this one definitely falls into that category. I can't tell you how many times I've definitely lost this game 3 or 4 times more than I've won it. And everybody I play with goes, "Oh, this is hard," but it's so fun. And you're probably starting to get an idea which one I'm talking about if you play cooperative games, because this one's really well known, and it's got a couple of expansions. And this one, number 20B, I'll say, is Ghost Stories. Ghost Stories is a game where you are defending, you are an Asian monk, a like Buddhist monk, trying to defend a town from the onslaught of evil spirits. And this, I can't remember his name is Wu Fang, or I'm taking that from a movie or anything, but the main ghost is coming in and he's got ghosts attacking the town, and it gets worse and worse and worse. And man, there's so much tension in the game, and you got these cool abilities, and each monk has 2 sides to their player card that gives them, each side has a slightly different variation of the ability that they have, which makes the replayability amazing. Plus, every turn, every game rather, the little town that you're defending and the powers of each of the little locations are in different places. So the game is different every time, the way the ghosts come in. And then they had a couple expansions. White Moon, I think, is one of them. It was really good. I do use the expansions when I play, or unless I'm introducing it to brand new people, and I just keep it to the base game because there's enough complexity in it. It is accessible. It's very easy to play. You move and take you go here, take an action, go there, take an action, take an action on the space, or or fight a ghost, or whatever. It's just really solid. Now, one of the things I like about it, it's got these really good components, touchy-feely, kind of neat components. with it. The little monk miniatures are just all the same, but they're different colors. And the tiles, the town tiles have really good artwork on them. The ghosts have really good thematic artwork. It just feels like you are this Buddhist monk trying to defend the town. And there's some dice rolling, there's dice luck involved, but you can mitigate that with tokens and things of that nature. So, yeah, without a doubt, one of my all-time favorite, really hard cooperative games, Ghost Stories. If you haven't played it, I cannot recommend it enough. It comes out on the table every once in a while for me, and every time it's a great experience, no matter how hard it is. So again, in this top 20, I'm just going to tell you, if you're into these types of games and we have similar interests, then you're going to want these games. That's all there is to it. So, okay, so top 20, number 20A is should be higher, and I'm going to tell you why it's not. Love crafting games. I love them. I love anything that has Cthulhu in it. As a competitive game, I really love Cthulhu Wars. I back almost every Cthulhu type game that's come out. And I'm not going to give any spoilers. I'm just going to leave it at that. I like Cthulhu games. They're really cool. I'm trying to think of some that are other ones that are competitive, but I just really enjoy them. They're just fun games. I'm looking around seeing if I have one that's easy to spot. No, but some of the ones coming up. Again, Cthulhu Wars is probably one of my favorites of a competitive Cthulhu type game. Asymmetrical, really cool. But the one that's in number 20A, and some people are going to say that should be higher. It's a really good game, but I'm going to tell you why it's not as high on my list. Is Eldritch Horror. Okay, now I've had some really good fun with Eldritch Horror, and it's like Arkham Horror, but you're globetrotting. It's the same Fantasy Flight games, Arkham Mythos with all the same people in it. And you get, if you played Arkham Horror or some of the other games, you get used to the characters. They're so cool, and you get to know who they are. And they kind of have some personality because they kind of span all of the different games that Fantasy Flight Games has put out in the genre, starting back with Arkham Horror, which is actually originally, I believe, a Games Workshop did it, and I think there was another version of it before that evolved into the current Arkham Horror. And we're not talking about Arkham Horror right now, but the one from Fantasy Flight Games, which has been expanded to the nth degree, and so is Eldritch Horror. Eldritch Horror has just got a new expansion in the Dreamlands, and it's cool. So, what do I really like about Eldritch Horror? Well, it feels like Arkham Horror, but you are globetrotting. You're trying to solve a big mystery, and I like the way that the mysteries roll out. You got these set of cards that dictate. They're different for each great old one. Like if it's Cthulhu, it's going to be different than if it's Nyarlathotep. And I bet you I pronounced that right. Maybe we'll see. And so you get a different set of circumstances that you have to fulfill in a different order. So it feels very, very unique each time you play it. And there's a lot of old ones now that you can play in that because of the expansions that have come out, and like the Mountains of Madness, and now the Dreamlands expansion. There's a lot of cool stuff for it. A lot of new characters that you can play. So one of the funner events I had, one of the events that was more fun that I had was with a fellow YouTuber, Paul, who goes by Catweasel. If you haven't watched his channel, I highly recommend it. He does a lot of games like the games that I liked as well. And we kind of have some different games on our channel, so you get a different experience. And even when we play the same games, you get a different experience. So it's cool. And he's really good and detailed and very thorough, and he shows great layouts, kind of gives you a great way to lay out your game if you're playing under camera and things like that. But I played a play-by-mail/video version of Eldritch Horror where he ran the game and we gave him our turns and told a story each turn. Go back and check that out. That was so fun. I was playing Jenny Barnes, and spoiler alert, if you don't want to hear it, stop now, skip ahead 10 seconds, I died. One of the first times, in fact, I think it's the only time I've died in Eldritch Horror. It was just a really weird, I took a risk, I knew I took a bit of a risk. And one of the reasons I took the risk is there were some people that were in queue waiting to play, and I thought, well, if I die, I'll give them a chance to play. So it wasn't really that horrible. But man, it was so awesome because even after the character's death, the other players carried the story of Jenny Barnes throughout. It never really stopped, and it made for some fantastic storytelling, which is one of the biggest things about cooperative games for me, is telling a great story with your friends. And in this case, it was with just people that are on BGG and people that I know from BGG and the internet and YouTube, playing this version of Eldritch Horror. It made it a lot of fun. And that is the best type of experience you can have with Eldritch Horror. I've sat around and had some great times with it. But this is why it's not higher than in my number 20. It's my number 20. And the reason why is I brought it to a game event with some friends. And if they're watching this, they're going to start laughing because they know exactly where I'm going with this. We literally had an 8.5, 9-hour session of Eldritch Horror. Literally, people had to drop out and new people had to come in so we could complete the bloody game. And we were playing it right. And I don't know what, and it's happened twice now. Not that long, but way too long. So there is a marginal risk that the game can get totally out of hand and just keep going and going and going and going and going. And I mean, we were playing it right. We were trying to get to the end. We were trying to solve the mysteries. The Doom track wasn't really moving. It just, man, it dragged forever and ever and ever. And it showed some mechanical flaws, I guess, in the game mechanics that really allowed that to happen. I mean, it was disastrous. Nobody enjoyed it. Even me, who likes the game, I about halfway through it, I was like, I could quit, but I'm not a quitter, so we're not going to quit. We stuck with it. Bah, we shouldn't have. We should have quit. And there's only one other game that's really kind of defeated me to the point of that, where it's just I've just run out of energy and time to want to continue playing it. And that was it was another Fantasy Flight game. What was it? It was a strategic game. Crud! I played it 4 or 5 times, never finished it. We just never finished it. We got sick of how long it was taking each time. What was it? It was the one. Anyway, I'll try to remember it. But it was a good game. It's just we got sick of the length and duration of it. So that has happened to me a couple of times with Eldritch Horror, where it's just gone on forever, and people don't enjoy that when it's happened. And when I run it on my channel, when I've gone to desire to run it on my channel again, I get nervous that it's going to be 30 episodes long and I can't finish it. And maybe it's the play style of myself and some of my friends, because it did go faster when we did the play by YouTube thing. It was good, and I've played other sessions of it that have been fine. I guess it's just luck of the draw. There's a lot of luck, and I guess just luck of the draw on the cards and how things roll out. That's Eldritch Horror. H.P. Lovecraft, Cthulhu, 19, I think it's 1930s, I think, pre-World War II, running around trying to solve these mysteries of bad evil cults and stuff, trying to bring this great old one, elder god, to come and destroy the world and do terrible things. I've never understood why the cultists always want the elder gods to come, because they want to destroy the world, like, completely. And so there really wouldn't be anything left to rule if, let's say, Cthulhu got loose. But that's the way they are. They're stupid. And Eldritch Horror, great storytelling game, lots of fun. Not complex, but not so complex you can't get it. The accessibility on it's a little lower for me, in the sense that it can be a long game. But it's good. And so I'm talking about these two a lot because I really enjoy both Ghost Stories and Eldritch Horror, both really fun for me, and I have a lot of fun memories, game memories. So let's move on, though. That is number 20A and 20B. So my first ties. Now I have one other tie that I'm going to talk about later, but I'm trying to poke and take a look at my list here. Okay. Well, number 19. Number 19 is a newer edition. I have been playing it recently, and I just really fell in love with it, so much that it made it in my top 20. In fact, it's on my table right now as I speak, because I'm filming a session of it currently. So if you're watching my channel, you know that that's going to be Black Orchestra. Now, I'm going to tell you, I've had my ups and downs with Game Salute. I almost swore off ever buying another game from Game Salute, and I kickstarted Bootleggers, which was a disaster getting that game. Now I got it now, and it's a great game, and I enjoy it, but it was bad. And there's some other ones, a couple of them that I can't remember the other ones, but it just didn't go well, and I was like, I'm not getting anything from these guys anymore. It's just I'm just gonna not boycott them, just kind of avoid them because it was painful. It seems like they've gotten their act together. I sure hope so. And I don't like talking negatively about anybody or any group. And it's not that they don't make good games. It's more about their business process. So it seems challenging. But Black Orchestra is a game salute game. And even as I'm sitting here looking at it, I'm finding a very big manufacturing flaw. And I'm not going to show it to you, but the player board is so warped and bowed, it's like this. And it's just been sitting on my table. I know how to fix that, and it's not that humid here that this should be happening, so that's disappointing. But the artwork on the board, everything else is great. So Black Orchestra, it is a historical narrative fiction cooperative game for representing a number of people from history that either did attempt or were part of an attempt to assassinate Hitler. I don't know how it's historically accurate. I think all the events are actual events, and the characters are actual people from that era that did try to oppose Nazi Germany and Hitler and try to have him assassinated. Like, for example, one of the characters, and I'm playing him on the channel with the playthrough, is Klaus von Stauffenberg, who, if you watch the movie or read anything about it, it's Project Valkyrie, where he almost got Hitler and planted a bomb at the table where Hitler was in a meeting, and almost got him, but failed, and it got some other folks. Well, he was shot and killed as a result, which is unfortunate, but he did try to get him. And it's the way the game rolls out and plays is just so streamlined and awesome. It may not be the best cooperative game. Well, there's obviously one's higher on my list, is number 19, but it's really solid, guys. I'm going to tell you, it is a solid game, and I think it's one that would appeal to everybody, unless you're a modern Nazi, I guess. And even then, it's still, I'm not going to venture to guess what modern Nazis might think. But, and that was a joke, by the way, so don't take me seriously on that. The game itself is just so solid. The way the turns roll out, the way the game plays, it's smooth. I mean, I could sit down and go over just show them the board without picking up the rule book at all. Show them the board, teach them how to play in about 2 to 5 minutes. Yet the game has a lot of depth, which is really, really cool. You feel the tension of it. Things ratchet up as you go through each stage because you play these event cards after every turn that enhance and move the game forward into different stages of the World War II history of the attempts and the events around Nazi Germany and our roles in trying to assassinate Hitler. Character mechanics. I love the mechanic of balancing your suspicion and your motivation. Like, this is one of the first times I've ever seen that, where motivation is an actual mechanic in the game. Are you motivated enough to do what you need to do? You start off as timid and you end up zealous. And if you're committed or zealous, then you're ready. You're ready to do the deed. You're ready to take Hitler down and get him killed. But if you're not, you may not be able to complete the objective. The scheme that gets cooked up, you can find them in the cards as you draw them, and you get these plots basically. And they require some items. They require that people be in certain locations, but they also require that you be motivated enough, that the one that carries it out be motivated enough to do it. And I think that's an awesome mechanic. That motivation also governs, like, originally your hand size, as well as your special ability. Like, you don't get the use of your special ability until you become positively committed, motivated to do the deed. And then, counter to that, you have a suspicion level. And this makes the game feel so tense and so good. Your suspicion level can be anywhere from low to extreme. And if you're at extreme, you got to be really careful, because you could get, if there's a Gestapo raid, you're going to be arrested, put in jail, and then tortured and interrogated, which it screws up the other players. And you have to draw these interrogation cards and make decisions that you can't tell the other players about. So cool, man. It's just really, really good mechanics. So you can tell I'm hyped about it, right? It's just a great game. Add to that, you have this ability to conspire. And when you do the conspire ability, you get to roll some dice. It gives you additional actions, but it also is the main way you increase your motivation. Because if you dissent, you become more prepared for an attempt to assassinate Hitler. Anyway, again, fantastic game. All the historical information, the art, the pictures on the cards, everything, just great. Game Salute, hats off to you. You produced a good one. Component quality seems good, except like I said, I'm disappointed in the warping the board. And it uses regular old wooden pawns. That's fine. The dice are custom dice. I like that. And the mechanics are about as good as they could be for a cooperative game. Number 19, because it's still new on my list, and I got other games that I play a lot, and I can still see myself bringing these other games to the table more than this one, but this one definitely gonna get played, and played a lot. That is Black Orchestra, number 19. Okay, number 18. Let me look. Number 18. Oh, so number 18 is one of the only two solo-only games on my list. So this is not cooperative. It cannot be played cooperative. It can only be played solo. And it's great. So Van Ryder Games, they produced two really, or actually a couple. What's the other one? What's the other one? I'm blanking out. Oh man, it's a good game too, and I've played it, and I have it. Anyway, really good games, Van Ryder Games. But it's Hostage Negotiator. I'm gonna probably look it up and post something in the notes of the other game I'm talking about. I don't know why I'm blanking out. It's probably right behind me. Hostage Negotiator. If you want to sit down for a half hour, 45 minutes, you got nothing else to do, and you want to play a game just by yourself, it couldn't get better than Hostage Negotiator. I mean, well, it could get more complicated, but if you want to play like a 3-hour game, like the Jet one from DVG, the one where you're in a jet, you're trying to do bombing raids, stuff like that. Flight Leader, I don't remember. Anyway, those are fantastic games too, but they're a lot longer, a lot more in depth. Hostage Negotiator, simple, straightforward, fun, accessible. You know, you give that to anybody, they could sit down and figure it out in about 10 minutes and play it and have fun with it. Really good game. The mechanic where you're trying to negotiate, you play these cards, has one of the most unique card mechanics where you actually you have all the cards you need at first, and then you can enhance your cards by negotiating with the terrorist or whoever, the hostage taker, and that negotiation allows you to, in the next round, acquire better cards, and then try and attempt to negotiate further with the hostage taker. And each hostage taker is unique. There's several, and there's been some expansions on it that give you additional hostage takers and a couple different negotiators. And then also the way that the cards roll out with their demands, they have a major demand and a minor demand. And the way those play out give you a lot of replayability, even if you're playing the same hostage taker repeatedly. And it's got this great little like speedometer wheel that tells you what level you're at with this negotiation and how many hostages you get freed. And the more hostages you get freed, the closer you are to winning. And if you can manage to bring in the hostage taker without killing him, you're in really good shape. And it has this great sense, and I did do a video, I did a session on it, so you can go back and look. It has this great sense of intensity, like, oh man, I blew it, I didn't get to talk to this guy enough, and now he might kill somebody. And even though the little hostages are just meeples, you start to feel that you're putting these people at risk by making rash decisions, and it's really cool. Anyway, Hostage Negotiator, really, really good solo-only game. It's the only of two, this one and Infection, Humanity's Last Grasp, whatever, are the only two solo-only games on my list. I included them in there because they're unique and special. There are other fantastic solo-only games. I just don't have them on the list. They were on my big list of 100 or more. And like I said, a lot of the DVG games were on that. I just didn't put them in here because of the accessibility. They're tougher games. Doesn't mean they're not as good. Doesn't mean they don't deserve a place. Just it would have been a slightly different list if I'd included them. Okay, Hostage Negotiator. That's number 18, I believe. Yeah, 18. Okay, number 17. Number 17 is Back to the Cthulhu Universe. So one of the things, when they came out originally with Arkham Horror, and I'm not talking about Arkham Horror in this, when they came out with Arkham Horror, one of the big drawbacks to Arkham Horror is you got to be dedicated to sit down and play for several hours. It's a long game. And when you have the expansions, it gets even longer. And it's complicated. And it's awesome in every single way. I mean, it's not perfect. It's flawed. But it just evokes such great storytelling. But a lot of people wanted something that seemed, I want to call it Arkham Horror Light. Eldritch Horror does not fit that bill. Eldritch Horror is just as deep as Arkham Horror. The only difference, the biggest difference, is it takes it to a globe-trotting event around the world instead of focused on a town or a city. And that is Elder Sign. Elder Sign is a card-driven, dice-chucking, Yahtzee-style game of where you're, in the initial one, the base game, you're in a museum trying to stop the coming of an old one, just like you would in the bringing on of a great old one, just like in Arkham Horror, where this evil terror comes to the world to destroy it. And you're playing investigators, some of the same investigators, same names and similar abilities than the ones that are in Arkham Horror, like Ashcan Pete and Jenny Barnes, like the one I played in the playthrough with Catweasel. I can't remember all the other names, there's tons of them. But Elder Sign fills the niche of, and it can be kind of long too, but 2 hours long as opposed to 4 to 5 hours long. I've had some long Elder Sign games. Elder Sign is also designed by some of the same people that did Arkham Horror, and that Richard Lanius, one of my favorite designers, who it has a couple of games in my top blah blah blah. Anyway, so that's Elder Sign, and Elder Sign's great. I love it. So you have these cards that lay out, and they come out the more when you shut them down, and you're rolling dice. So you roll dice that have symbols on them. You're trying to match those symbols, and some of your special abilities alter the symbols. You can get items like a shotgun that gives you some. I can't remember the exact names of the symbols. Skulls. I call them skulls. But now, if you want to try Elder Sign without making a big investment, and you have an iPad or an Android tablet. Or a phone. I know it works on a tablet, not sure about the phone. I think it does. Pick up the app for Elder Sign and play it. You'll see it plays exactly like the board game without. I almost don't call it. It is a board game, but it's not driven by a board. It's driven by cards that act as your board, so it's a board game. And you get to collect trophies. You destroy these locations and kill monsters, and monsters show up. The occultists and weird, weird creatures from the Cthulhu universe, deep ones, all kinds of crazy stuff. And it fills that niche. It feels like an Arkham Horror game. It feels like a Cthulhu game, but it's card-driven with Yahtzee dice. There's another game, it's not cooperative, so it didn't make my list, that fills the same niche in a competitive fashion called Ancient Terrible Things. They're similar in the way they play out the dice and everything like that, but again, Elder Sign, and it's got a bunch of expansions. I have them all, and the one I like the most, and I'm trying to remember the name of the expansion, is where you introduce kind of the whole town into the museum. So the town of Arkham. You're going to locations in Arkham as opposed to just running around a museum. Why all this bad stuff's happening in one place, I don't know. But it made more sense. It feels more right, more Arkham Horror-esque when you're running around the town. Now, also, don't forget that they've also created Arkham Horror, the card game, which is not on my list because I haven't played it yet. That also, I believe, fills the Arkham Horror niche without being as long and as complicated, based on the videos I've seen on it and everything. I have it, and I even got the expansion, even though I haven't played it, because I am going to get to my table. It's an Arkham Horror game. It's going to get on my table. That is Elder Sign. Elder Sign has, again, fantastic game. You got unique characters, unique abilities. You dice chuck. You're trying to get these Yahtzee rolls. You can influence your dice. One thing, it's not pure luck, because you get to influence how your dice turn out. Through special abilities and items and other cards and spells, and you got Dexter Drake, who's a magician, casts a bunch of spells. Great. That is Elder Sign. Elder Sign definitely belongs in my top 20 for me. Yeah, and that's number 17. So again, these top 20, I can't say more about them. If you're into cooperative and/or solo games, soloable games, these gotta be on your list. Elder Sign. Okay, 16. Wow, 16 was one of the most unique games I've played in 2016. I've played all but the last one, I think, of the expansions for it. And I remember when I sat down, I was so enthused to play this game. And I sat down to play it, and I'm like, wow, this is, again, accessible, fills something for me in a cooperative game, which is awesome, awesome storytelling. Fantastic artwork, theme, feel, interesting mechanics, interesting card play, sometimes heavy in puzzles, sometimes more combat. Runs through this great story that expands and grows as you go. Has a minor legacy mechanic that helps you carry some things forward from game to game, especially if you play them in succession, in order. And just the first one blew me away, and I kept collecting it afterwards. And this one's caused some people didn't like it, but I did, and I think you would too if you like my games. I have never put it on my channel because I don't want to ruin it. It's one of those things when the biggest drawback to it is when you've played through it a couple of times, and I do say a couple of times, and I'll explain that. You're kind of done with that set, but there's more sets that came out that continued and told different stories. That is time stories. Time stories. What you are is a time-traveling detective, problem solver. Yeah. And you're going and trying to correct time anomalies with and you're you. You're not a character. You're not playing somebody else. You're you as a time traveler in this world. And what you're doing is assuming the role of somebody by taking them over. Like AKA, what's the show I'm looking for? Quantum Leap, where he would jump into the people's bodies and actually be somebody else. Same theory. You're actually jumping into the bodies of people who are contemporary in that time. The first one was so cool. Very adult. The first one was very adult. Some of the later ones not as much. There's a fantasy one and one in Egypt that are not nearly as adult. But the first one, you're in an insane asylum. And you know what? Some people talked about the political correctness and all that crap. And I'm so tired of those things. You know, you're telling a story. If somebody's offended because this takes place in a old insane asylum where people were mistreated, which actually was the way it was back in the turn, the early 1900s, I guess, which I think is when that story takes place. It is what it is. Don't play it. That's fine. But I've never been, and I don't consider myself. I'm pretty sensitive to people's needs and concerns, and those things mean something to me. But when you're watching a movie, I'll give an example. Some of the most, well, I can't remember. It was one of the most racist movies I've ever seen, and I was like, oh my God, this is so completely racist. Constantly through it, but it made sense. Oh, was it a game? I think it was a game. It was a game. Mafia 3. But it didn't offend me because, first off, they told you it was going to be that way. And secondly, and this is a computer game, secondly, it bit the times, and it was racist and it was horrible, and that's part of the storyline. Same thing here. So in the first one, you play people who are in this asylum. They're not doctors. They're the inmates, and some of them are crazy. One of them's a little girl that's a cannibal. I mean, she's nuts. The other one's the other one is a cocaine addict, just crazy dude. They're crazy people, and that's the way it goes. And the story's really neat. And there's all these great twists and hard. That first one was hard to solve. It took us a couple of. You can make multiple runs where you go back and run through it again. And some people said, I don't like doing that. You're doing the same thing. No, you're not. No, you're not. It changes, and you take different courses of action. It's really cool. But super hard, that first one. The second one, the Marcy case, was and you can look at the box and tell it's a zombie type story, and it's got a lot more combat, less puzzly. That one was a lot easier. And the third one, the fantasy one, I'm trying to remember the name of it, was again a bit more difficult and much broader in scope. I love that. I mean, I wish they'd come out with one that's just massive, big old deck that tells an ongoing story through multiple sessions. And has lots of branching opportunities for changing the story, like the fantasy one did. It came in with a secondary deck that didn't activate until later on in the game, which was really neat. And it's driven by these cards and everything, but the cards, like, you form a map, and the map changes and alters the area you're in, and different locations come up, and you can move from location to location and lay out that area. It gives you, this is where the uniqueness of the mechanics come in. It gives you a panoramic view of the area, and you place your character on that area, and the picture tells you the story. Now, you're going to look at, when you draw that picture, you're going to look at the story on the back and read it. And you're going to read the story in it and understand what you have to do in that scenario, and you have to make that decision. You can talk to their players, but you can't give direct, like, I have to do this, A, B, C. You say, oh man, guys, there's these 2 zombies here, and I'm not sure, oh my gosh, I got to take care of this. You can't tell them what's going on, and unless somebody's there with you, then they read the card too. But you got to keep the information to yourself. So that's part of what adds the replayability, is because you can bounce back and forth in the different locations. I may go through a whole session and not see the locations that you see, Because if we're solving it, because efficiency is a big deal, you only have so much time before your time runs out and you get ejected and go back to the future or the past or an alternate world or whatever, because in time stories you do go into alternate timelines, alternate universe. That's why one of them is a fantasy story, like high fantasy magic and stuff. And one's in ancient Egypt, one's one's in the 1960s, I believe, 60s, 70s, and the other one's in the 30s. Anyway, ultimate expandability, and I know there's been fan-based ones. I haven't played any of the fan-made ones yet because you have to make the cards, and I'm just too lazy at this point and I haven't done it. But I am looking forward to future expansions this year of time stories. Again, very accessible but really hard, and so I don't know, when I look at this one, I don't know if it's something you would say, hey family, let's sit around and play time stories. I think they'd enjoy it for a while. I don't know if they'd make it through the whole few hours, several hours you may need to solve it. The good news is it has a save game mechanic that you can save your position where you're at and come back to it. That, to me, makes it even more accessible. But that's time stories, and that time stories is, again, the biggest drawback to it. It's not the cheapest game in the world because there's a ton of artwork, and the artwork's fantastic, and that makes it expensive. And the cards are big, giant-sized cards. Everything's not. There are smaller cards, but the main ones are big. Is that once you've played through it a few times, you're really done. You could sell it off or get rid of that box or whatever, and you're kind of done with it. But what I've found is I go back in and play with other people, teach them how to play, and I play one of the characters, but I let them make most of the decisions. And I found that to be really enjoyable, watching how other people figure out the puzzle that I've already figured out, and watch them muddle through it and look at me for help, and I go, I'm not helping you. No way. This is on you. You got to figure it out. I'll do what you say, and I'll interact and tell you what's going on, but I'm not going to make the decisions. I found that to be really fun. So, like the first one, the Asylum, it's called Asylum. Time Stories, oh, by the way, the Time Stories game itself is generic. The board, the tokens in it are made to be able to span any one you play. Tokens have different meanings depending on the scenario that you're playing. Sometimes they're bullets, sometimes they're health kits, sometimes they're cocaine. This token's cocaine. Last game it was a bullet, depending on the scenario you're playing. And the characters are all unique, which is fun. So anyway, it's got some of the most unique mechanics I've seen, and it tells a fantastic story. That is number 16, Time Stories, and yes, for me it ranks higher than Eldritch Horror and Elder Sign, for sure. Okay. Next one is another Richard Lanius game, number 15. And I probably mispronounced his name, but I think that's what it is. He's a great designer. I love his designer. Him as a designer. He does some of the coolest games. And this one's an old one. It's probably one of the... It's Fantasy Pandemic is what I call it. And it doesn't matter. Pandemic's great. And it has a lot of the same feel around it with some different mechanics and a huge fantasy theme. And it's really cool. And that is Defenders of the Realm. Defenders of the Realm has all the components you want for a cooperative game. Except that there can be an alpha player, but you know, you have your own character, your own abilities, you can move around the board. It is not complicated. It plays quickly. The turns play quickly. It has a lot of variety to it. It is very accessible to everybody, and it looks great on the table because it's huge and there's miniatures everywhere, and your characters have miniatures. And there's different character packs that have come out over time. I have all of them. It just makes the game really cool. And like you have this one character is this halfling that, or like Hobbit type character that flies eagles, giant eagles. He's really very cool. And there's a lot of card play and some luck with dice. There's dice chucking in it like most of the Richard Lanius games, and it's just fun. So, Defenders of the Realm. What you're doing is you are trying to defend the city, the main city in the game, from these evil generals that are marching. And there's an expansion where the evil generals are all dragons, different dragons, but there's these evil generals that are marching toward the city, and you have to go out and defeat these generals and their minions before they get there and destroy it. And again, there's a lot of items, a lot of card play. You can go on quests, you can pick up items. You go to an inn and pick up a quest or rumors. You get unique, special, cool abilities that you add onto your character. You get a unique ability if you're the one that slays the general. characters can gang up on the general and beat him, and there's this great, if you know me, you know one of the things I like is cards that have multiple uses, and Defenders of the Realm does that great. It represents the dice that you use to attack the generals, it represents special things that happen, and it represents how you travel in the world. Like if you play cards with horses on them, you get to travel by horseback. It gets you farther. If you play the ones with the eagles and you're flying around, the halfling guy, he flies all the time, but the other people can take the eagles. Or maybe you set up some teleporters and you're teleporting back and forth to try and defeat the minions of these bad guys. And the bad guys are each different, and they have a different ability. Their minions are different and have different abilities. The orcs multiply quickly, but they're easier to kill, where the dragon kin people are really hard to kill, but there's not as many of them. And their general drags this horrible taint across the land, and if he taints the land too much, it's one of the lose conditions. So you have to go cure the taint and kill him and get him, push him back as quickly as possible. And if they get to the city, I'm trying to remember the name of the city. If they get to the city, they win and you lose. And so there's a couple different ways you can lose, but that's the main way. There's the biggest way is you run out of minions for one of the generals. The taint. All the taint crystals that taint the world go out onto the board, or they destroy the city. They get into the city and win. It has a lot of tension to it, and like Pandemic, has the same feel as Pandemic if you've played that. So it's, again, by the way, this video is definitely taking longer than the other ones because I'm telling you more about these top 20 games than I did the previous versions previous games we talked about. That's Defenders of the Realm. Defenders of the Realm, can't recommend it highly enough. It's cool. It's got a big giant box and a big giant board. It looks very awesome on the table when you're playing. Feels like you're playing something really meaty and epic, and it does feel epic. It's very cool. That is number 15, Defenders of the Realm. You're probably starting to wonder what's in my top 10, because I think you probably are going to assume that some of these ones I'm telling you now might have been in my top 10, and they're not. They're in my top 20, so what's in my top 10? The next one, number 14, I talked about one version of it in a later session, in one of the previous videos. It's higher on my list because it's not as good as this one. And the crazy thing is, I traded this game away, and I traded it away for something very special, and made a deal with somebody. It was a very good trade for me, very good trade for him. We both got our worth out of it. But I regret trading it off because I love the game so much, and I'm going to reacquire it at some point. That is, and again, I like the theme better than the first version of it, and I like some of the changes to the mechanics better, though I do find it easier than the original game, quite a bit easier to play. That is Zombicide Black Plague, and Zombicide Black Plague is Zombicide in a fantasy setting, with wizards and armor and weapons, crossbows and hand weapons instead of machine guns, and all kinds of crazy stuff, and the zombies are different. And they introduced a necromancer mechanic where the necromancer's on the board, and if he gets back off the board, then it creates more spawns of zombies. And again, it's got the same tension as the modern Zombicide. A little less tension, I think, because I think the biggest differentiator for me is armor. The armor mechanic in the game is what makes the game easier. Now, I've lost the game. You can go, I think I lost one on the show because I threw everything in the kitchen sink in it, and I had like 5 different terrible unique abominations running around my board killing everything. But if you're playing the normal game with just maybe an add-on or two, the armor mechanic kind of unbalances the game a bit if every one of the characters has good armor, because it means you're not going to die as quickly, and you can push through and take some risks. You can still die and all that good stuff, but it's just not as easy. And again, it has the same mechanics as Zombicide, where you get 3 actions per turn, unless you get more through circumstances. And you're picking up items, you're searching rooms, trying to find stuff to help you fight off the zombies. All the while, the zombies keep multiplying and coming and coming and coming. And there's different types. There's walkers and runners that are super fast that can catch you and do more. There's fatties, which are big, giant blob walkers that are harder to kill. And then you have the ultimate one, the Abomination, which is he's only in the Zombicide Black Plague game. He's only killable. Well, to take that back, there's some special abilities that if you get all the way to the highest level of character advancement, you can kill him that way too. But for most of the game, the only way you can kill him is by finding something called Dragon Bile and a torch, throwing the Dragon Bile down the ground, when the big abomination comes, you got to light it on fire and it kills the abomination and any of the other zombies that are with it. It's just similar to the Molotov cocktail in the original Zombicide. But again, it's fantasy themed, so I liked it better. And the only drawback to it, and that's what makes it better for me than the Zombicide game. And I own all of the Zombicide seasons, as I told you in the previous video. And I had everything for the Kickstarter, almost everything for the Kickstarter for Zombicide Black Plague. But I traded away for something, for one of my top games. So that is Zombicide Black Plague. And since I talked about Zombicide, I'm not going to spend as much time on Black Plague. Sorry, I needed to help my son. He had a little homework thing he needed real quick for me as I'm filming. So anyway, that's Zombicide Black Plague. Great game. Again, I highly recommend it. I highly recommend if you're going to get it, get as much as you can for it. It makes it more fun. One of the enhancements I love about Zombicide Black Plague over Zombicide is the character boards. They're plastic and they got inserts where you put the character sheet and their ability. There's an experience tracker and you put their items and it works really well. I love that aspect of it. I love the plastic tokens for both Zombicide and Zombicide Black Plague and the plastic doors and all that good stuff. Pimp this game out. Makes it much more fun for everybody if you pimp the game out and do it right. The only thing I would recommend that I didn't do and will never do for Zombicide because it's just too much is paint it. Okay. And Black Plague, same way. It's just there's too much to paint for me. I mean, you could do mass paintings of the zombies and everything, and some people have done some phenomenal jobs on it, but for me it's just too much. So that's Zombicide Black Plague. That is number 14 rather. Number 13. Wow, number 13. Heavy game, guys. I'm going to tell you right now. Academy Games put out a game that I think is phenomenal. Even people who don't like cooperative games do like this game. It is Euro style, meaning that it's not steeped in luck at all. There's some luck to it in card draw and that, but it's not lucky. And it's got probably one of the heaviest themes in a game that I've ever played. I'd say, you know, when I said a Black Orchestra about assassinating Hitler, pretty heavy theme. This one by far takes the cake. And I talked about it in Hostage Negotiator, where you're worried about losing the people, the hostages, and they're just little wooden meeples and that, but you just feel like, oh my God, I can't lose them. Well, this one, they're cubes, but these cubes represent people. And it makes it so intense, and I swear I felt emotionally moved in a bad way when I lost people. And this game is called Freedom: The Underground Railroad, and it is a game about slavery, the abolitionist movement, and the use of the Underground Railroad to bring slaves to freedom in the North from the South. And man, it is a heavy game, and some people, oh, I'm offended by the theme and everything, but it was so well handled that there is no reason to be offended by the theme of this. You are an abolitionist trying to free slaves. You're trying to do the right things, you're trying to be good, and they're historical figures, and everything in the game is historically based. And that to me made it so fulfilling as a game. And I gotta tell you, you know, when you're trying to get people up and there's slave catchers that are moving around the board on behalf of the plantation owners, and you're trying to smuggle people, and these people are represented by little cubes, but they're people, and you're trying to smuggle people up north to get them to freedom. And when they get recaptured or you lose someone, man, you actually feel it. Like, oh, I gotta plan better. I gotta do better. I'm losing people, and it's just an outstanding game. It's probably one of the best games I've played. It's so well designed and well developed, and difficult. It's very hard, and it's hard to take when you lose, man. It's like I said about Ghost Stories, it's so rewarding. Losing's okay, and losing in this game's okay too. You feel you got to go back and try again to win because you have to do the right thing. And man, I can't begin to tell you how solid this game is. You know, you start off with all the people in the slave plantations in the South, and you're playing cards, and there's two aspects of the game. There's an aspect where you're using the Underground Railroad to move slaves up north to get them to freedom in Canada in the upper north, while at the same time you're an abolitionist that's going into the political arena and trying to gain favor to gain things like opening up other areas for the slaves to be able to escape through, and getting a bonus to money, and because you need money, you got to fund this whole thing, and the money's tight. Ooh, it's tight. It's one of those games where, yeah, do I spend this dollar? I don't know. I mean, that's rough, and you don't get a lot of money, and you have to go and petition for things, and these cards, these bad people come out against you to prohibit you from advancing, and you're playing, some of them were men and women who were abolitionists, some of them African American, some of them not. Just unbelievably intense, solid game. Not a short game, not a real short game. It's a few hours long, I think, and I'll post the duration of it on the video. But if I was to say in my top 20, if I was to say get a game, I'd say get all of them. But this one, really get this game, especially if you have children that are starting to hit the preteen or the teenage years, and they're studying this range of history, maybe even before that, at 6th, 7th grade, I don't know. When they're starting to explore the Civil War and slavery and the abolitionist movement, it'd be an awesome time to bust this game out. It's very informative. Everything in it is historically based. It references very specific historical events that took place during the abolitionist movement. It doesn't get into the Civil War aspect of it as much as just the Underground Railroad and the movement of getting people to freedom. And God, fantastic game, guys. Can't rave about it enough. If you're offended by the theme, okay, whatever. The theme is heavy, and it is handled appropriately, and I want to be very clear on that. There's nothing in the theme that makes you feel like it's wrong. We all know slavery was wrong. We all know that what horrible things happened to people during that time, and it's a black mark on our country. It's just a terrible mark on our country. It's awful. But the game handles it so well, and you feel like you're one of the good guys trying to help solve this. You're not on the other side. You're not a slaver. There's if that had taken place, if there was any like traitor mechanic, it'd be horrible, and I wouldn't have played it. But you're an abolitionist, and it's good. It's fantastic. So that is number 13, guys. Freedom, the Underground Railroad. Get it, especially if you have kids that are starting to study that period of history, because they'll enjoy learning that period of history through a really solid game. It is a Euro-style game. There's no dice chucking. I think there's no, it's not a dice-based game for sure. I'm just trying to remember if there's any mechanics that are luck-based. And I guess the cards, the way the cards come out, because you have a row of cards and they advance, and some of them drop off, and you can try and stop some of these terrible events to happen. They drop off. If they fall off the board through movement, then they usually affect you in a very bad way, but you can try and stop them before that happens, which puts some tension in the game. It's really neat. And it's one of those games where it's heavier also in the sense that the decision making is, if I do this, I can't do this, and can't do this, and that's really bad, so I got to really balance out. And it does have a tendency that this is a game where if someone's really good, a really good gamer, they're going to start dictating traffic. I have a rule when I'm playing any cooperative game that if you don't ask for help, you're not going to get it. No, people cannot volunteer help. It has to be asked for, and I like it to be asked for in a way of, what do you think if I do this? Because I don't like the alpha gamer portion of cooperative gaming that can occur, and so that's the way we avoid that. Only offer help, and I've had some people break that and tell them, I will not play with you, I will not continue to play this game with you if you keep doing that. This game can do that because it's deep and heavy, but it's fantastic. Freedom, the Underground Railroad, number 13. Okay, number 12, we're almost down to the bottom. Number 12. I had a part of this series later on in one of the earlier videos, and I love it a lot, but they kind of revamped, retooled the next editions of it, and it made it really good, like really good. And there's actually two games that fit, for me, that fit in this box, this category, in the series that are so excellent. And that is Legendary Aliens. So where before I talked about Legendary Marvel, the deck building game, this is Legendary based on the Aliens movies, series of movies. And it takes you through the series of movies, and you play characters in there, and it has the same mechanics, similar mechanics to the Legendary, very, very similar. But you're playing a character now as opposed to just playing a bunch of different superheroes, playing cards that represent superheroes. You're playing a character. and you're also influencing the movement of some of the other characters like Ripley and the lieutenant and all the different guys from the movies and the series as you advance through each movie block, and each one has different episodes that represent the different movies and different events in the movies that took place. It's really good, man. It is so fun. Is it better than Freedom, the Underground Railroad mechanically? Because, that's the one right after this. No. No. But with the theme and the way the game plays out, and it gets really tense, really fun. And, I don't have to go into this as much depth because I talked quite a bit about Marvel Legendary in my previous video. But it just has these really amazing mechanics to it that are it plays out so much better than the Legendary Marvel game in building tension and telling a story. And that's the main thing for me, was telling a story. Not as accessible. You have to have, if you're going to play with people who don't game, you got to have somebody that knows this game. Because there's the setup, and this is true of Legendary too, the original one. I didn't say this during that one. The setup is always difficult. It's long and it takes some time to set the game up. Legendary Aliens, guys, and the next one in that was, and I kind of combined them together, which was Legendary Predator. Okay, so you can do the Alien versus Predator, and it's just, you can play the Predator, you can play, and even in the Aliens game, you can play the aliens, and there's two different versions of that. You can be turned into an alien because you ingest an egg. Now in the base game, you just get knocked out, you die. I remember the first time I played this with my younger son, and man, he got an egg in him like in the first few turns, and he was so upset. And I was like, "Oh, dude, it's just a game. Don't forget." I mean, he was genuinely upset about it. But so I found that it maybe doesn't play as well with younger people. I mean, he's old enough to play the game, but it upset him quite a bit that he got an alien in him and died so quickly. Regardless, great game. Aliens, Legendary Aliens. This is one. If you're going to play a deck builder game, pick this one up. Great, a cooperative deck builder game. It is cooperative, even though it does have the potential. You don't have to play it this way. That's why it's on the list, where you can become an alien. And in the Predator one, you can play Marines, you can play a Predator. You have choices, and it makes it really good. They're both really fantastic games. They're big boxes, lots of cards. Again, the only drawback to them really is the setup time. If you organize your game box right, the setup time's not even that bad. It does take a little time, and if everybody knows how to play the game, setup goes pretty quickly because you can divvy up the responsibilities and make it worthwhile. That is Legendary Aliens, based on the Aliens movies, and Legendary Predator, based on the Predator series, and the combination of the two. They work well together. Very cool stuff. Legendary Aliens. Okay, that is number 12. So we're down to number 11, and that's where this series is going to end. And to be honest with you, this is another one that I'm not sure. This one really kind of ranks higher with me. I've just struggled because for 2016, this is probably my favorite new cooperative game that we played. And we played it and played it and played it, and because I had collected the first edition to the hilt, this one I had almost everything I needed for it already. When I got the second edition, the base game, the second edition, to continue to expand it. And then I just recently got the new expansion for it and everything, and I haven't played that yet. It is also a game that is app-driven. It tells an unbelievably good and fun set of stories. It is, to me, it's going to be limitless because all I have to do is keep putting out new storylines in the app. And that is Mansions of Madness, second edition. It is, for all intents and purposes, a dungeon crawler. You're in the town of Arkham or someplace else. In the first scenario, the basic scenario, you are actually investigating a mansion that's being something devilish is going on there. I'll just say that. And I played it, by the way. Played it on my channel, so you can go watch that. The app guides the story, which means there's nobody controlling the game, so you don't have to have a bad guy or one person controlling the overlord. In the original Mansions of Madness, you did. Now, there were a lot of variants that came out for Mansions of Madness that changed that. But in the game itself, you had to have someone that played the bad guy. Well, in second edition, the bad guy is the app. And so nobody has to be the bad guy. Everybody gets to participate. And the app is phenomenally well done. It's Fantasy Flight Games, so all the components, the board, the tiles, they're beautiful. And again, it's all the same characters you become familiar with Eldritch Horror and Elder Sign and Arkham Horror, all the same groups of characters. But in this one, you're playing them in a microcosm of a dungeon crawl type scenario where you're exploring a setting in detail. It could be a farm. It could be a town. There's one where you're literally trapped in a town being surrounded by an angry mob of people that are either mind controlled or something. Anyway, really cool stuff. I hope to see more games like this, but I'm sure that, you know, Fantasy Flight has deeper pockets than a lot of people. I'm sure that app had some serious development time associated. At least that'd be my guess. Um, and the way the game plays out, you know, you play an individual character. You can die. You can go absolutely crazy. It's not that easy to die. It's not that easy to go crazy to the point where you're not in the game anymore. You definitely feel like you get your time out of it when you, even if you end up falling out of the game and losing. But man, what a phenomenal game in the app. I mean, if you just open up the app and it you know, you hear this thunder and lightning and these crows fly off and you go up to this mansion and it's just great. And the whole thing that there's a narrative at the beginning of each scenario that's voice acted phenomenally well. And then it gets into the storyline, and the storyline, when you explore different things, the map it unfolds on the app for you, and you place out the components of the map as you go, and it gives you new items and new things that you can do, new areas to explore, and something will happen. And what's unique about it, what makes it cool is, you know, where before a bad guy, someone playing the bad guy would guide the events of the enemies. Stuff just happens. A creature will come bursting into the room, or some cultists will come out and scream bloody murder and attack you. The fighting mechanics even the fighting tells a story, because it's different. If you have a big lead pipe and you go attack somebody, it's going to tell a story, a narrative about how you swing and what happens, and it depends on the monster you're fighting, and you have to fend off all these horrors and stop from going insane, and man, totally accessible. Though it's deep, it's totally accessible, especially with the app-driven mechanics, and it's just fun with a capital F. I mean, fun game. We played it, and some of the sessions can be long, several hours long. But we played it so many times, and you do have to have an iPad, or I believe an Android, or it's on Steam on the PC as well. And one of the things I'm going to do one day is I'm going to bring my big folding table downstairs, put it in front of my big giant screen TV. I have the Steam box that allows you to stream to your TV with the controller. I'm going to throw the app up on the big giant screen TV, and we're going to play it that way. That's going to be cool, and I can't wait to do that. But once again, if you want to have a night where you sit around and tell a horror story and get really engaged, and you have a character that you get totally wrapped up and immersed in, Mansions of Madness 2nd Edition is going to do that for you without a doubt. It is great. Mechanically fun and sound. It has similar mechanics to that of Arkham Horror, Eldritch Horror, so it's instantly familiar if you've played those games, yet totally different. And again, same characters. You kind of get attached to certain characters in the game. It's kind of cool, like Silas Marsh, for example, in Arkham Horror. And you know, it's Cthulhu. Can't go wrong. It's Cthulhu. It's you know. You're stumbling upon some evil ritual to raise a dark one, some kind of elder god that's going to destroy humanity or create some hell on earth, and you got to stop him. And you're an accountant, or maybe you're an investigator, maybe you're a detective. You might be Michael McGlynn, the gangster, the 1920s gangster with his Tommy gun. There's all kinds of characters. You can see lots of playthroughs of Mansions of Madness, but I'm going to tell you, if you watch playthroughs, it's going to spoil at least the first story for you if you just watch the first one. The cool thing is that the app has continued to expand, even without additions of game boxes, big boxes. So that is my number 11, and that's where we're going to stop for this session. I got one more video to go. That's going to be my top 10, and in my top 10, there is 11 games in my top 10 because I have a tie. Again. Yep. Again. Now, I almost had a tie in another tie in my top 20, and I'm going to give it an honorable mention because I accidentally took it off the list and then forgot to put it back in at a higher rating. It probably would have been in the 30s. and that is Run, Fight, or Die, another Richard Lanius game, but because it's really not cooperative, it can be played cooperatively, but one of the reasons I took it off and then forgot about it was because it's not really cooperative. It can be soloed really well, and it can be played cooperative, but at its heart, it's competitive. I mean, everybody's trying to survive this zombie apocalypse by themselves, but so it's not on my list. However, what I'm talking about right now is Mansions of Madness Second Edition. That one should be a must-buy if you want to play a cooperative storytelling game, and you have an iPad or iPhone or Android tablet or phone, or a PC that's running Steam. If you have those things, and the app is free, you don't have to pay for the app, you just pay for the game itself, and then if they come out with expansions, you get the expansion and the storylines just get included in the app, and it's unbelievable. They expanded the stories in the app without even expanding the boxes, just using the second edition stuff that came out from the first edition. Call of the Wild and Forbidden Alchemy, I think, is the other one. But yeah, just really good, guys. These top 20 games get me so excited to play, and I love getting to the table. So again, ask me questions, guys. I want to hear from you. I want to know what you think of my top 20. How do you feel about Freedom, the Underground Railroad? I think it's one of the best games made ever for a cooperative game. Have you played Mansions of Madness? What do you think of it? Mansions of Madness Second Edition. First Edition wouldn't have been as high on my list. It wouldn't have been on this list at all because it had a forced one versus many mechanic. And now it completely avoids that with the app. It's just phenomenal. I cannot wait to see more games do that. I really can't. That to me is going to be the pinnacle of cooperative gaming and legacy gaming. Think about it. You can save your game status. Yeah, that's pretty cool. And you can do that with Mansions of Madness. So if you wanted to come back and play it later, you could reconstruct your layout or just leave it there and then come back to the app and restart where you left off. You could definitely do that. Anyway, you're probably starting to get antsy about what's in my top 10. You're probably starting to question some of my thoughts and processes, and you're starting to speculate. And I'm really curious what you think that looks like, because my top 10's coming really soon. This was my, this is 11 through 20, and these are all fantastic games. So again, guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for all the subscriptions. My subscriptions have skyrocketed. I'm really pleased with that. Thank you so much. I feel that the channel's taking a new course, and I'm planning to do some interesting things with it. Also, question for you guys, and since you may be watching this whole video through to the end, I also play video games from time to time, primarily focused on board games, but I've wanted to do some video games. Like right now, Resident Evil 7 is such a fun game to watch. I kind of wanted to play it on my channel, but I don't want to dilute the channel into the wrong thing. I thought about creating a separate channel for it, but I have my Doug's Digital Board series that I've played on this channel. I just don't want anybody thinking or losing sight that this is at its root a board gaming channel, because that's what it is. And Doug's Digital Board was focused on games that acted and felt like a board game, or was a board game in digital format. Also, what do you think about doing some games? I've been thinking about gathering all y'all, not all y'all at the same time, but gathering people and playing. I have a room in Tabletopia that's mine that I can invite people to play to. I kickstarted it, and I wanted it for this reason and haven't used it this way yet. What do you think about playing games that way? Would you want to join in, and it would be broadcast? You'd have to have a webcam and be able to chat and be on voice chat and all that good stuff and talk through the game and play some really fun games on Tabletopia and Tabletop Simulator. I'd like to do that. I know there's some series that I watch that really do that well, and it's a lot of fun. For example, Kingdom Death Monster has been run that way a couple of times. I think the coolest one was probably Crit Camp. I don't know if you watch Crit Camp, but they're pretty fun to watch. They drink a lot of beer and play games. But they did a Tabletop Simulator Kingdom Death Monster. I think they're still doing it. It's going to go on forever. But it's really neat. I haven't caught up all the way because I started watching it halfway through, and there's a lot of episodes. But how do you feel about that too? I'm really curious. Anyway, guys, thanks again. We're getting down to the last video of my top 50, and this was 11 through 20. So I'm really excited to hear about what your thoughts are. Let me know, and I will talk to you soon. Have a blessed day, week, year. Enjoy 2017. Don't be afraid of the future. I know it's sketchy and scary, but it is what it is. And we have awesome board games to play, so keep that in mind. Anyway, take care, and I will talk to you soon.